Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Spiritual Underground podcast. I'm your host, Dan Reeves. As always, just a little background. I'm this podcast has been primarily 12-step recovery based. That's my background. That's how I found my way. But as it evolves, I've got a lot of really cool people coming and bringing information to the door that really plays right into that. Because, for me, I had to get that monkey off my back and kind of move past that piece of my life, and then it was what was next, because there's this void that happens and I have to fill it with something, and I need to, and the better thing to do is fill it with positive things. And also, the 12 steps did a great deal for me, but it didn't like fix me. There was more work that needed to be done once I kind of got that off of me. That, some of that stuff wasn't even clear to me until I was able to like clear the fog off and go, oh, wow, look at this behavior that I'm doing over and over again. That's not good for me. And this kind of stuff. And today's guest, Dana Hargus, is, I will just say, a trauma expert. Looks like a lot of things. Well, I'm gonna let you talk about it because I don't like to give other people's bios. I let them. They're the professional and the subject matter expert on themselves, not me. So, how are you doing today, Dana? Tell me a little about how we ended up here today.
Well, I'm doing great. I do have a long history in the world of trauma, and I wouldn't have even identified it as so. Um, I 35, 38 years, a long, long time ago, I got out of college and became an educator. And my jobs were mostly in special education and often with emotionally disturbed young people, even in a juvenile facility where children were basically incarcerated.
Mm.
So I watched, I watched these kids and I watched them struggle, and it was truly heartbreaking to see. And I figured out things that worked, and I did not, some people talk about not liking teaching. I loved teaching,
Mm.
and I loved my special needs kids. I did. I loved the challenge. I loved the fact that a lot of times nobody had ever connected well with them, and I did that. So
Uh,
it was good. But as the years passed, and I became a mom, and I had two adopted children that were from the foster care system. And then, looking backwards, I'm like, so there was another place, there was trauma. And, those children, especially the one that was older, had more trauma. And I did all these different things to help him. And I wouldn't say that it didn't help. Things improved, but again, we were just in this place of kind of limbo of, are you ever going to be able to function better than you are right now? And I watched, I took him everywhere, and really nobody had anything to offer. Here's a pill, here's this, here's that. And he was just a child. And so as I looked at those two things, I was working on a master's in educational counseling, and I thought, I'm gonna do something different. I'm gonna leave education and I'm gonna go into this private practice. And I was thinking about it and considering it, and I was kind of slow going it, like just trying to make a decision, how do I leave one job and go to the next? And then I heard about biofeedback. And my mom called and said, watch Channel 4 News. And so I was watching the news, and they were working with these kids doing biofeedback. And I was so intrigued because I'm like, my kid needs this. Like, this would be helpful, because they talked about how kids that were getting kicked out of school and all these different things were able to function better. So as that unfolded, I just became super intrigued, and I fast forward as fast as I could to finish to get my license and do all the things to learn more about this biofeedback. And that now when I look at all of that, and I've been here 25 years now. I have a large private practice in Ada, Oklahoma, and there are 11 of us, and we schedule over 1,000 appointments a month. And
wow.
we I think the thing we do very well is deal with trauma. We do a lot of things well, but biofeedback really gives you the ability to calm the nervous system in a way a lot of other things don't.
So help me with biofeedback. What?
Okay. So biofeedback is kind of the broad term. If there are lots of kinds of biofeedback, there's like heart rate variability, body temperature, but more specifically, what I do is called neurofeedback because it's feedback to the brain. So electrodes go on the head, not for anything to go in. It's just to pick up output of brain waves. And then that moves through a box into the computer. And from there, it's like you could talk about this all day. So I'm just going to make it super
Yeah,
simple.
sure.
No, it's not this simple, but this will make it make sense. Um, if and the way it used to work to me is more logical for people to think about because as computers get faster, it's less apparent what we're doing. It works better, but it's less apparent because used to the gap between what happened in the brain and what happened on the screen was 300ths of a second. I mean, was 3 seconds. Today it's 300ths of a second. So
Mm.
but way back when, and this is a good visual for those of us, at some point this is going to give out because people aren't going to know what Pac-Man is. Like it hasn't happened yet, but somebody's going to say, "What's that?" And then I'm going to think, I can't talk
Uh,
about it anymore. Um, but so the brain, if the brain was doing what you wanted it to do, the Pac-Man ate the dots and it was like beep, 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 beep. And then when the brain would veer off, and that could mean made brain waves that are not conducive to focus or that produce anxiety or that increase pain. Like any of these things would happen, the computer would go, this is not good. And the little Pac-Man guy would turn black and it would wait. And then when the
mm,
brain corrected, and the brain always corrects. The brain absolutely is intelligent. It's just gotten offline. And when we show it what to do and show it how to do better, it absolutely can. From the brains of very, very small children to stroke victims to people who can't talk anymore. I have never, well, as one little caveat, once somebody has full dementia, my theory is whatever it is that keeps you, that allows you to learn is no longer online. If somebody has early onset dementia, biofeedback does really well. But
mm.
once it's all like they're just completely, not themselves anymore, there's this space there it's really much harder to help them. But that would be like my only caveat because brains want to do better. And over time, through a series of things, we show the brain how to be calmer and more organized and the brain does. Like the brain becomes calmer and more organized, which basically helps everything. People call for 25 years saying, "Does biofeedback help with?" and whatever it is. Almost never would I say no because what isn't brain related? Everything starts in the brain. And if the brain is better, sleep is better. If the brain is better, you're going to have less pain. You're going to have fewer problems with anxiety, depression, attentional issues, behavior problems. So often, a a brain that is dysregulated, a nervous system that is dysregulated, contributes to whatever problem is going on. Irritability, agitation, inability to get along with others, inability to parent well, inability to get your math homework done. It's all brain related.
Yeah. Yep. I know everybody can relate to that because sometimes it's just is not firing, and you can't
Right.
figure out why. And you don't, hopefully those times don't come at very critical moments, but sometimes it can. But that thing where, sometimes I just kind of have to take it offline for a minute and go think about something else and then come back to what I'm doing to kind of reset that. I like the Pac-Man, because that is kind of like, that just chewing along all the time, but then boom, you can just run into a spot. And I find, you know, I'm not old yet. Uh, I'm 56. Uh, I see that happening more often now too. Just a straight up, just not being as sharp as I once was, as far as being able to maintain my focus and do things, stay on point like I used to be able to.
And when you think about brain function in regards to addiction, um, I've never been some people are actually addiction counselors, like
Mhm.
that's their degree. But I've never really touted myself. I don't have that degree. I'm a licensed counselor, but not with a specialty in addiction. But through the years, I've had many opportunities that people arrive with depression, anxiety, different issues. And then at some point in our journey, they're like, oh, yeah, I drink a lot. And I'm like, well, tell me more about that. Or, oh, I smoke pot 5 times a day. Do you think you could help me? Or, I'm addicted to pills. I'm addicted to my prescription. I'm addicted, on and on. I'm addicted to pornography. So, through the years, I've had a lot of opportunities to work with people with addictions. And I will tell you that early in my journey, as somebody who doesn't really have an addictive personality, like I would, in my mind, I wouldn't verbalize this. I would think, just stop. Like
Yeah.
destroying your life. Like I knew it wasn't okay to say it. Like I'm supposed to be helping you, so I need to hush here and just listen. But as the years have gone on, I have seen that I've never worked with somebody who's addicted to something that doesn't have a trauma history. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it couldn't exist, but I haven't seen it.
I haven't either. Now I don't have near the experience you do, but I have been in the trenches in recovery and have worked with a lot of people. And usually underneath of there, we do a thing, step 4 and 5, where we inventory our lives, and then 5, where a guy will tell me about it. Uh, it seems nobody comes out unscathed
Right.
at
It-
some level.
right. And so the things that they do for a reason. Like and eventually, I don't know at what point, at some point during my journey, I've just all of my judgment left because in my mind I thought if I would have lived what you would have lived, who would I be?
Hmm.
I don't know, but I don't think I would have fared better than everybody else. I don't think I would have been the one powerful person that lived through this terrible thing that was like, meh, no big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. We'd like to think so, but
Yeah, but it's not true. It's not true. And for those of us that were blessed enough to have a life that wasn't filled with trauma and hard and with a lack of support, because there are people who have traumatic events that get the help they need quickly,
hmm
that have great support systems that do feel fare better. Obviously, not everybody that has trauma becomes an addict, but I do believe that everybody that's an addict has a trauma. And I also believe that about criminals.
Yeah.
Like criminal behavior doesn't happen for no reason. I don't think people are born wanting to harm people. I know there's a lot of theories on this, but things happen in life that produce all kinds of things. And so much of it will never be fixed with talk therapy. Like, I love talk therapy. I do it every day, but there are a lot of things that cannot be talked better. And that's where I feel like alternative kind of treatments come in because
Yeah.
biofeedback, it doesn't matter if you want to be better. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter if you want your brain to shift. You don't have to talk. Like now, it's literally you sit in front of a screen and you can watch YouTube. And there's a filter that goes on YouTube. So little kids can watch Dude Perfect and adults can watch, I have one guy that enjoys watching beekeeping videos. It doesn't matter what you watch. But as you watch it, when your brain does what you want, the screen is clear and wide and the volume is strong. And when your brain diverts off and gets on the wrong course, the screen closes in, it gets a little foggy, the volume goes down. So basically, in the course of a session, you're getting yeses and nos. When you
Hmm.
do well, you tell the brain yes, 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 yes. And when the brain darts off, you say no, no, no. Well, over time, the brain's like, I get it. I can do this. And there are people that after just 1 or 2 sessions can sleep and they haven't
Wow.
because sleep is king. If you
Yeah.
can't sleep, nothing's good. And if you sleep well, everything's better. It's like you don't, there's still things we have to fine tune, but the
Sure.
first thing you want to look at is how do I get this person to lay down and go to sleep, preferably when it's dark, and wake up when the sun comes up, because that
Sure.
will make life better.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about that, that I watch people who are on night shifts and
Mhm.
there's no way I could do it. I don't think I could function. I need that sleep. And I've really been paying attention to that. And, not really so long, maybe a few months. I've finally decided that I'm gonna actually pay it. I think I'm sleeping good, right? But you don't really know that you're sleeping good, and I don't know if I trust this electronic equipment or not for sure. I always wonder about that too, but I'm trusting it for now, and it does seem to be on par. That when I feel rested in the morning, it will say I got good sleep, and when I don't, it says that it wasn't so good last night. In my intro there, I was talking to that this how because ultimately, like that 4 and 5 is really kind of like, talk therapy in a sense. You're not with a licensed counselor, but it does seem, and it seems, and it's really effective for some reason to have somebody sit down and listen to this stuff because a lot of these things are things people were not going to tell anybody. There's almost always a time, and that's a question I asked towards the end. Was there anything that you weren't going to tell me? And sometimes they'll get it out then sometimes, and I see people break through with that and like it'd be like a magical treatment for one person, but then I see other people that there is something like that, like the dog in a bone kind of thing. It's got a hold of them and they just can't. I'm not trained or anything, but I've sponsored quite a few guys and I feel like I'm pretty good at this process we do. And I've had a great deal of success with it as well. But there's some people that there's something in there that you just can't let go of. They can't break through that next piece. And I'm always, you know, suggesting to them to seek more help because I'm not, obviously there's something going on that's deeper than this old dude can help you with. I'm here for you. I'm not abandoning you. I'm still here every day, all day long if you need me. But to have some other things, but it's so hard for people. It seems to like reach out for that. It's hard enough to come into 12-step recovery and ask for help. Uh,
Secrets destroy. Anything you've never told anybody is a problem. Like, because it's like you need somebody to compassionately hear you. You need them to, they need to see that I told my secret and you still like me. I
yeah.
told my secret and you don't think I'm horrible or you don't think I'm gross or you don't think that, I'm without redemption here. Like to say something out loud in so many ways frees you from it. You just have to pick carefully who you say it to.
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah. And that's kind of one of these magical things. I don't know how I see some stuff around the 12 steps where, we spend time building a relationship before we try to do that, right? You can't go sit down and go, hey, okay, dump out your bucket right here. They have to feel that I'm safe. And actually I have a cabin out in the woods that's an hour away and it's out in the middle of Hoosier National Forest, a log cabin my dad, my brother, and I built. And it's just like a sacred spot. So like increases that level of like safety that,
Mhm.
we're here alone and it is safe and it's cool to get it out. And then the other thing is, along with that is, I don't know, 80% of the time I've been through something similar so
Right.
I can say, hey, yeah, I understand. I've had that happen too. I did that too. Some of the worst things we think, sometimes it's what's happened to us, and sometimes we happen to somebody else. And you can say, yeah, I don't mean to, I don't want to. That's got too much energy wrapped around it, but it's the Me Too thing. It's hey, me too, man, me too.
Well,
I've done that.
yeah, and the thing is, you're right. There's a lot of negativity in regards to that Me Too thing, but there's a lot of strength there too. People believe they're alone, and they're
Yeah,
not. They
yeah,
don't think anybody else ever did this, or they think if somebody did, it's a bad person. So to hear somebody that they respect go, yeah, I can relate. That's a
yeah.
powerful thing. That is important just to be a part of something, to be a part of a relationship where somebody says, I hear you and I had that experience, or I know somebody who did, and I'm sure that was hard and I still love you. And it's just very important.
Yeah, yeah. We spend the night down there, and my little joke is like I feel, and I really do. I see a transformation. I wake up with a different guy than I went to bed with the night before. I see that lifting off of them. When I ask them how they're feeling the next day, the term that gets used mostly is lighter. I feel lighter. I was in a relationship when I was a really young child with another male, another guy. and it carried on to a point that, that I felt broken or dirty or, and I carried that into my 40s, and it wasn't until sitting down with a sponsor did I ever, and I think it may have been the same question. Is there anything you weren't going to tell me?
Right.
Yeah. Uh, this went on when I was a little kid, and the freedom I felt of getting that out finally, and crying over it, and like today, it doesn't carry that weight anymore. I can share it with people and I can use it for good, and it's not that heavy thing that I carried for 40 years, like it was a sack of dead bodies.
And somehow that kind of thing that happens seems worse for men than women. Not that it's not horrible for women too,
Yeah,
but the emotional ties to that is somehow I'm not strong. Somehow it is like there's just more societal weight on it somehow if it's a man, even though you were just a little boy, and even all of that. There, I have just had so many conversations that people have such grace, like the men that experienced to have such grace for women that experienced it, but not for themselves.
yeah, yeah, right, yep. And I'm always a little cautious because people know the people I know, but it seems like it happens to everybody. Somebody, you have some kind of sexual history, some kind of something that goes on from along the scale, because mine wasn't bad, really. Like the guy I'm actually in contact with the guy still today. We weren't for a long time. As a result of my healing and my recovery, I was able to reconnect with him. And he's a married man, a gay married man today. And he views that in a completely different way than what I carried it with. He thinks about it as like a warm experience that we bonded and that there was something that way went on. And that was enlightening to me too, that I carried it like it was a dirty, nasty secret that somehow I was broken. And the different viewpoints we both had over the exact same experience is really was enlightening to me. I went to and golly, I hope he doesn't watch this. I went to do amends with him and I realized that I didn't have one to make because he's not harmed.
Right.
And luckily I had the wherewithal. God gave me the knowledge, the intuition to put the brakes on that and just have lunch and have a good time instead of bringing this to the table. And I'm so glad that that came to me that I said, nope, hope, stop. This is not what that is.
Mhm.
Uh,
But it also doesn't negate the fact that that's what it was for you.
right. Yeah. Right. I just
It's
didn't need to
like,
put it on him.
right.
It, I had that insight or that whatever was given to me. I believe in some type of God, higher power, and I lean on it today. And I believe that's what tapped me on the shoulder that day and said, "Yeah, just have lunch." Uh, Now this Trump, it's it doesn't seem that long that we've been. Yeah, I mean, I came into recovery about 15 years ago. I really got traction about 10 years ago, 11. It took me a while. So that's why I tell people too that stumble out of the gates. We mostly all stumble out of the gates. You like to think that you're just going to get it, but you don't. And so I have that experience of stumbling out of the gates. But the trauma thing, I've heard that word like become something in that window. Now, maybe I was aloof and just dumb and not aware of it prior to that, but there's a lot of talk about it today. But I don't think it's that much more prevalent. It's just that we're getting it on the table. Isn't that more of or do you
I
think
don't,
trauma is more prevalent today than it once was?
that's a hard question because we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, we don't.
And once you look at something, then you see it. It's like that sounds
Yeah,
but it's the truth. Like once you see like, oh, like this is a big deal. Maybe our understanding of trauma has grown. And I agree. Because sometimes I talk to people who are older and basically a lot of terrible things happened to them in their childhood and nobody even acknowledged it was terrible. It
yeah.
was like 1970s before DHS existed. There wasn't anybody to intervene in the 40s and 50s, and a lot of people saw their children as property. Like, and people would know something bad was happening in a home, and they would say
But
things
that's
like, "What can we do about it? That's none of our
mind your own business.
Yes, that's none of our business." So clearly, there's always been trauma. But I find myself wondering if there are things that aren't worse because of like the state of the family.
Hmm.
Like without a two-parent home, you have a higher level of risk. Like you need two people to do the things, to take care of kids. I'm not saying
I agree.
I am in no way putting down a single parent. People get where they are for all kinds of reasons that often aren't even their own fault. There was a time in my life that I was a single parent. So I'm in no way saying being critical of these people. I'm
Right.
just saying we've gotten so accustomed to this being a way of living and acting like it's not a big deal if kids don't have a dad, or it's not a big deal. Like it's a huge deal,
I believe so too.
huge deal. Children need both parents. Children need them active in their lives. Because trauma rolls downhill.
Yeah.
You know,
And that's traumatic for a child.
it is.
It is, and there was a time, and I kind of say, at one point I thought about like trauma, like had to involve violence and had to be that kind of thing, but I know now today it doesn't, I mean, you could lose a pet and be traumatized by that, it doesn't have to be what a lot of times the categories that we think of. And I watched my kids, I was, in my about the time I got sober, I had just gone through a divorce, and that had really my addiction was the crux of the divorce, and then that was a cycle because then I got worse as a result of that. But I watched but then it turned a corner. That actually allowed me to recover because then got. That's the other thing. It seems like I was talking to a gentleman last night that was here at my house about his son, and his son doesn't think he has a problem, and his dad thinks he does. And until the son comes to grips with that he's got a problem, he's not going to do anything about it. So my problem got bad enough that I was forced to do something, which in the end result was a great thing. Would I do that? Would I have written that play? No. Uh, but um, but I watched it change my kids is where I'm going. And me and my ex-wife, I don't even like to use that. I usually refer to her as my kid's mom. I don't like that ex thing. We're still really good friends, and we did try to maintain some semblance of a mom and dad along the way, even though, like for instance, I would go over there early morning Christmas, and so both parents are waking up and we're doing that. We did that the whole time, and we tried, but it had its impact. And I see that on a regular basis. It's another one of the things, not always, but majority of the people that I work with in recovery are come from a divorce, almost all of them.
Well, and it's hard to be married under better circumstances than that. A lot of people that aren't addicted to anything, that are like you would think these are basically they're doing okay. Well, we still got a 50 something percent divorce rate.
Yeah.
And some people say more than that. And for us to insinuate in any way that that does not traumatize children is foolish.
Yep.
I've had people say kids are resilient. Kids shouldn't have to survive their upbringing.
Right. Yeah.
They
And kids
should,
are resilient, but that has nothing to do
yeah,
with it.
for sure.
Uh,
But resiliency doesn't mean there's not damage.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And there's
you
a lot
know,
of, and I know this also happens for real. Sometimes it's probably for the best because the relationship and the window they're living under is worse than the alternative too. And I know that happens as well. So there's a lot of dynamics that are, you just can't draw a line about it. I grew up with a two-parent family. My mom passed away in 2016. If they'd have made it another year, they'd have been married 50 years. So like, and my childhood for the most part was wonderful. I really don't have, I don't fit the check boxes for the most part. There are certain things that would turn, that would say you was going to end up being an alcoholic and a drug addict. I had a two-parent family. It was stable. Everything was pretty stable other than these other things that happened, that I had no control over. There was nothing it's not my fault. That's one of the things that I come to understand that those things that went on when I was a little kid, none of that was my fault.
right.
Might be my responsibility to heal from it, but it wasn't my fault to have that went down. But the majority of the people I work with come from some people had horrible childhoods. I mean, horrible. It's just unfathomable to me coming from my background that somebody could actually survive that. And then looking back too, I look back over the history of people that I know that checked out early. Uh, from the time first friend, I was like 14, 15 years old when my first friend killed himself. And he was already now, I didn't know it then, you know, but now looking back, I can see at that age, this kid was full blown alcoholic at that age. That doesn't even compute to me too, you know, that how could you get there so quickly? But I also had been around he lived with his father, and his father was a nightmare. Drunk too. You didn't, you know, when John's dad, you saw him pull in the driveway, you left. You didn't, you went out the back door and got out of there. You know, you weren't hanging around there when he was there. But you know, this whole, you know, I'm interested in like this, it's a reprogramming, right? That you're talking about in a sense, almost like going into the computer.
Right. Well, and that would be a way to look at it because what you're really doing is your con if you want to do a car analogy, most people idle too high.
Mm,
So they are on the edge all the time. So there's no margin for life. They don't have, it's like the car breaks down and it's the end of the world. Or someone burns the food and people are screaming and hollering, or just general things in life happen. There's no margin. So our goal is to get things calmer and more organized. And then it's like instead of being like a revving engine all the time, you actually are able to turn off. Like you're able to turn off. And now when life happens, you have space for it. You have
right.
the
Yeah.
ability to think, I really hate that this happened, but I'm going to be fine. Like you can
Yep.
consciously, logically think through something. How am I going to solve this problem? And then while you're doing that, you're also showing your children how to do that
Yeah.
as a parent because a parent's trauma becomes a child's trauma and that recognition that we need to be able to recover ourselves in before we try to help them. It's like we can't if we are involving them in our chaos, it is not a gift you know
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah. That old, the oxygen mask,
yeah.
analogy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You
Get
had
you
to
get
do that,
get
you know.
yourself first because you're not going to help anybody until, and it doesn't mean like we extricate ourselves from our families necessarily, but it's like we have to realize that there is a need for that nervous system to calm down. There is a need for the brain to reset. And our society and the things that are going on in our society are creating more problems. Computers, and phones and that constant I am
Yeah.
on all the time.
Just
If
all
you're
that stimulus that's just
if you're
constantly
on
coming
all
at
the
us.
time, yes, and people don't know how to shut off, so they take a pill, they drink a beer, they do all these things that are not good. And then there are other things that aren't good that we aren't as critical of, like eating too much or or being negative all the time. It's like things are going on and we're like, there's nothing wrong with this. It's the truth. You know, and it's like there are just so many things that are so important in terms of our nervous system and our brain that absolutely people have the ability to do. And even though often they know to do it, they justify not doing it. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know why I have anxiety, but I drink monster drinks and I don't drink water. And I'm like, you know, there's a tie-in here. We need to look at. There's responsibility. What am I doing? What am I consuming, even if it's not an illegal substance?
Yeah. Yeah. That's another one of my little uh pet peeves, I guess. You know, the again, my background's are 12 steps and I believe in it. And I know it works for a lot of people. But then like You go to a meeting and they're all standing around pouring coffee and smoking cigarettes, it's doing, and then that's another thing, I hire guys when I work with them, I can't get to sleep, but we're at a meeting at 8 o'clock and he's got a big cup of coffee. It's like, yeah, man, you might want to like slow that caffeine intake down sometime earlier in the day. I always think about analogies and I see hear you speak in that way too. It just makes sense to me. But the analogy was given to me was like we walk around with a basically a garbage can with backpack straps on our back, and everything we do, everything we can't help it. It goes every experience we have, a piece of that goes in the bucket. And at some point, like the bucket's overflowing and I don't have a margin, so the next thing that happens is too much for me. It's too much. And then also, I think about that, like with some of that stuff in there stinks. And I don't want to get too close to you because I'm afraid you'll smell it.
Right.
So I'm also distancing myself from people for the same reason, the isolation that we tend to do when we are in a pinch, as that bucket gets full. And for me, the 12 steps and allowed me and my sponsor to dump that bucket out and clean it, sort it, put the stuff that was, the stuff that needed to be placed in the past, put it in the past and put that back there on the past shelf. Polish up the good stuff because there's been a lot of good things too. Put the good stuff back in it. Now I got a backpack full of good things and I got some margin. So the next thing I run into, I got some space
Right.
to manage it. And at one point I didn't. Everything was a crisis. And you see that, that's kind of a uh almost just regular that people are like on the edge of crisis. One thing goes on and that's too much. And
And it's like the way in which our society deals with mental health issues is also often part of the trauma. You know,
mm,
medication is rough. Like I I occasionally see some positives with medication. I won't say it's never good, but I'll say I've seen a lot more tragedy than I have good. You know, people on 6 or 7 meds, people hallucinating, people like it's like that's the solution for this problem. I don't think so. I do not think. And then you look, what are the side effects? The side effects are often homicide, suicide, rage. Like it makes no sense to my mind that that is our first line of defense. And then we look at inpatient care. Have some people have good experiences there, most don't. I don't believe it's appropriate for children.
mm,
Like I think it's traumatic. I have spent session after session dealing with children's trauma from being what they call locked up. Like
yeah,
their analogy, I got locked up. Well, I thought that meant juvie or jail. No, that's inpatient care because that's what we do with hard kids when we don't know what to do with them and they didn't break the law. We lock them up.
yeah,
I don't think that's okay.
yeah, I agree. And I did it with my daughter. We did it. We didn't know any better at the time.
And
We
that's
were
exactly
reaching for
right.
straws and you go ask for help and that's their
That's what they
suggestion.
tell
So,
you. Yes.
and we actually backed out of one once. My daughter's had some, and again, this stuff, I think there's a genetic component to some of this. And there's also, just the lifestyle stuff that causes it. My daughter struggled with substance abuse, and we really had to go at it for a while. I got two children. One of them won't touch it, and I think he won't touch it because of what he saw it do to me. And then the other side of it is is her, and we took her to a place here locally that when we started getting the EBGBs whenever they were talking to us, it come to like, so how long would you think she'd be here? Well, we don't know. And I was like, well, if we want to come get her, can we? No, she can't be discharged until we, and that kind of stuff. And we was like, yeah, no, never mind. See you later. It just felt wrong. And I'm glad at that point in my life, I was in a place, same thing where I can
Right.
understand that. That's the other thing. If you're when you're no matter what it is, whether if it's substance abuse and this kind of stuff, or if it's this critical, cans too full, you don't have the space to make good decisions.
Right.
It's almost impossible for you to make good, clear, conscious decisions because you're too muddled up. The wiring's crossed.
Right. And that's, that's kind of how I've spent probably the last 15 years thinking, kind of, if I ran the world, what would I do? Because I see all of the heartache related to our interventions. And
Mm,
I'm like, it's wrong. It is wrong that we have no other solutions. But I also think it's not fair to gripe and then not come up with a solution.
yeah, right.
That's kind of where I'm at now. I've done what I've done for a long time, and I think we help a lot of people. But I think there are people that need more than once or twice a week counseling, but I don't necessarily think they need what we're offering as a society.
Mm,
So, that's where Restore of Ada came in, because I just kept thinking, what would this look like? And I've thought of it over and over. Like I initially thought, I'm going to buy a mental hospital and I'm going to show you what I can do. Like, I can, if I had somebody for 30 days and had as much money as you're handing them, I could work a miracle. Like,
mm,
I don't need, I'm not gonna send them out worse or the same as they came in, or calmer because they're sedated. Because really the tool's medicine, and they use it like a hammer. It's like, we will keep sedating you until you stop fighting, or until you stop. And then what? For the rest of their life? That's what we're going to do. We're just going to, like, I don't see that as a viable solution, but it's like, is all that hospital needs to do is manage them for 30 days, and then they're out the door. And then somebody else, and rest assured they'll be back. Like, the system is self-promoting. It's
yeah, I believe at some extent some of the treatment centers around here, I think that might be their business plan.
Yeah, and the
A
thing is,
revolving door.
right, if what we do works, somebody shouldn't need to come back. Somebody
Yes.
should be back. If, it's like the insurance company has spent $30,000, and and your family member or loved one has been gone for a month, and then they come out and now you don't even know them because they're so sedated. And then it's like, well, now you need to get them off of that. Like, are you going
Yeah.
to leave? And some people take the notion we're leaving them there. Well, if you stay on those kind of meds long term, it is very unlikely you will recover or find your way into a better life. I just think the goal should be freedom, not
Yeah.
incarceration. And even if it's just in your own mind. But, then, I just started getting real practical. I had my last three kids were going to head into college, kind of all like banned their 3 years in a row. And I'm
Mhm.
just like, I'm not borrowing $1 million. Like, so I got off that. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to open a boys' home. And I tried to figure it out with our state how I could do it. Because I'm like, I can do, well, they won't even pay me enough to pay good help. Like, it's like, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it right, but I shouldn't have to go into the hole. I'm not asking to get rich. I would like to be able to break even here and pay help and show you what we can do differently. I could never, they're like, oh, you need these sprinklers. It costs $30,000. Like,
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm not going to make enough money to pay for sprinklers and good help. Like, it doesn't make sense. And it's like, I'm not giving them crap food. We're going to have good food, and that costs money too. And we're going to need supplementation, and we're going to need biofeedback, and we're going to need a therapist, and they were like, "Whoa." And I'm like, "You can hire anybody. Other people are willing to do what you're doing to stockpile kids, but I'm not stockpiling kids. I need a low enough number to heal them."
Yeah.
And nobody really has an interest in that. Like, and then in
It
the
seems, yeah.
yeah, and in the long run, financially, you save money because you're not paying $3,000 for medication. You're
Yeah.
not paying for recurrent care. You're increasing the likelihood in the case of children that they could be adopted later. You're increasing the likelihood in case of adult that they can get married, stay married, and raise their own kids. Like, so through all of these different things, I have arrived at what we call restorative ADA. And biofeedback is our primary intervention, but it is a 9-week program. The first 6 weeks are spent at home preparing for people to come for the 2-week in-person portion. And in that 6 weeks, we basically give people what they need. And for some people, it's like an understanding of attachment and how attachment impacts our relationships and what we need to do to begin to heal that attachment. We also look at gut health because we make more of our neurotransmitters and hormones in our gut than we do in our brain. And our
Hmm.
mental health will be no better than our gut health. And why we don't sing this from the rafters. And every time we give an antibiotic, we destroy our gut health. And
Hmm.
a probiotic will not fix it. It'll band-aid it, but it won't fix it. There are just so many things that are doable, that are feasible to do, that are often free or nearly free, that people ought to be working with, and they're not. It's not something the doctor tells you. It's not something, it's like you have to go to a very specialized place to learn about how to truly heal your body once and for all and how to keep it healed. So
Yeah.
we
And that place doesn't take insurance.
that's correct. That's correct. Insurance will not pay. And so you get because they're not interested in us being well.
Yeah, it seems so.
It's they are not interested. So then so that first 6 weeks is online, and then people come to Ada and they get 5 months of biofeedback in 2 weeks. It's intense.
Mm.
It's morning and evening. And then in the rest of the day, we learn about all of those other things about what do we need to be eating, and we cook and eat together, and how the body stores trauma in fascia, and how do you release the fascia through just simple exercises and things, about lymph flow, about again, attachment is king. Attachment is everything. And if you went through trauma, you're not attached, and your attachment style will be the same as your parents if you don't understand what it is and change it. And even if you think you had good parents, they may not be securely attached. So there are just so many different moving pieces that we really have the ability to teach and train. When Restore is over, there's a follow-up week, and then there is a year included as what we call Restore Plus. Restore Plus is an online forum that has all of these pieces that talks about here's the kind of food you should eat, and here is how your here's how to manage your thoughts, and there's therapy things, and there's written parts, and there's videos, and there's an online forum where people can ask questions, there's an adoption support group, there's all these
Mm.
pieces. And we when we came up with Restore Plus, it was my attempt to say that anybody can get better. Obviously, you can't get biofeedback on Restore Plus because it's an in-person event. But we set the price point at $7 a month because
Oh,
we
wow.
just thought if somebody wants to learn to reset their nervous system and wants to figure out how this works, anybody can afford $7 a month. And there's so much information there that you pursue that information and you find something you're like, I could do that, and you do this piece and you get good at it, and then you come back for more. And I'm very proud of that piece of it because the other part's always been in my head. I'm like, if I could do this, if I could pull all this together, I know what I can do. But the Restore Plus is gives people time, and it's open to anybody, not just participants of Restore. Anybody
Hmm.
can do that. Um, but I feel like the capacity for healing for anybody is there if they're willing to put in the time and the energy.
Yeah, I do agree with that too. I do see that, obviously some people have bigger hurdles to jump through than others. But uh, I can't imagine somebody that, just wouldn't be able to. You think about like what's happened to people, and some of the worst people in the world that do the most terrible things, they weren't born to do that stuff. Something happened.
Mhm.
Something flipped a switch in them. I always joke around it like if Bill Wilson was writing the 12 steps again, step 13 and 14 would be something to do with nutrition and exercise or movement. Uh,
Right.
it's not something I do teach that, at the very least, I'm like, go for a walk more than half the days of the week. Just start there, just go for a walk, just
And
get
to do
up, get
something, yes.
moving, just baby step kind of stuff. I've heard a lot about the gut stuff in the last few years. My kid's mom delves into that kind of thing, the gut health. And I don't know as much as I try to, because this stuff that a lot of people call food is not food.
know.
It's
And
some
the thing
chemical
is,
conglomeration that we eat and they
yeah,
sell.
if
I
we
haven't
could
heard.
just learn to eat real food, like that's a start. And it's like you don't have to go. I find what people do is like rather than go on a walk, they join a HIIT class and they go one time and they hurt so bad they never go back again. You
Yeah,
don't need a HIIT class. HIIT's hard on your body. Like go for a walk. And even better, go for a walk with a friend. When you
yeah,
combine exercise and relationship, you're more likely to do it and you get the benefit of both things.
yeah, yeah. I got tricked into going into a combination 12-step yoga thing. It was called Y12SR. A gal tricked me into it, and I fell in love with yoga. And it's the only thing I've been able to maintain. It is a higher intensity yoga, but I also know how to take care of myself. And some days I can really stomp it. I call it kick your butt yoga because it's a power vinyasa and it's hot and you're sweating by the end of it and your heart rate goes up and there's actually cardio in this yoga. But it's a piece of where I like substituted something good. And I went to yoga teacher training and learned a lot about what all that does for you beyond just the movements and stuff. I'm really a huge fan of that and it works for me. But I couldn't, I can't take somebody to go do what I do. Like
Right.
it'd kill them. You got to ease into that.
Got to work
Put
into it,
some
right? And,
time.
sweating is a powerful thing. We are full of toxins and we need to sweat. Like we need
Yeah.
to sweat those out.
Yeah. I look like I jumped out of a pool when I'm done.
Hmm.
I'm soaking wet. There's a puddle of sweat on the mat. Uh, and I feel so great, man. If I can I like to get up in the morning. They usually have a 6 a.m. class and I try to go before first thing in the morning. It's counterintuitive. It seems like that I'm like, where are you out? But it actually, it energizes me all day. And when bedtime comes around, I'm ready for bed too.
Right. Yes. And that's the thing, finding out what good thing can I add to my life and do it until it's a habit. Just like we have bad habits, we can have good habits. We can
Yeah.
create time and space for things that are good for us. And once you've established it, don't let anything get in the way of it. It's just like this is who I am. I eat a healthy breakfast every day. I spend time extra. It can just become these positive things just like before who you part of who you were was doing things that hurt you. Now, part of who you are is doing things that build you up.
Yep, yep. And one of the things like I've heard a few things like what's the difference between a good habit and a bad habit? Good habits are easy to break. Uh and and how easy it is, or at least it seemed how easy it is to do the things that are not good for me, and how hard it seems to do the things that are good for me. That
Right.
mental thing
But
of like that resistance, and then but actually now, if I like my dad was sick not too long ago, and it was a deal, and it kind of took me out of my normal flow. Uh, it's like a withdrawal from not getting in the yoga studio. I feel like stiff. I don't feel good. And I like today, I need that. I actually need it. It's a piece almost like I needed another pill to get through today. Now I need this. I'll circle back around to one real quick thing because you made me think about that. So many times that people have depression and anxiety. Those are the two things I hear more than anything else. Depression and anxiety, one of the two or both. And and they're a substance abuse issue. And they go to the doctor and they give them a pill. And it's like, hold on, we're giving a guy drugs for a drug problem. How's that making any sense at all?
right. And when we look at addiction, I I've worked with people with all, like I said, a lot of different substances, and it's so interesting the way in which they'll say, like, when I do this biofeedback with you, I kind of feel like I did when I smoked pot, or I kind
Mm.
of feel like I did. And what they're really saying is I did what I did so I could relax.
Mm,
Like I could not get free of my thoughts or my pain or or those repetitive thoughts of the things that happened to me. But when I consumed this substance, and I learned that early on, I was brand new as a counselor and so nervous about like, oh, what am I going to do with these people? And I had a call from an agency here in town, and they said, they wanted to send somebody here, and they had done that before. Like they basically, it's kind of like vocational rehab but not vocational rehab. But they, if they deemed you that you could use money for something and you could meet certain criteria, they would give you money to start up a business, like
mm,
very small kind of things, like we'll help you buy a trailer and a lawnmower and you can mow for people, or we'll do that. Like so it was really helping the down and out crowd. And they called and said, hey, we have this participant, and part of her plan is to see you. Would you be willing to? I said, sure. So I said yes, and that's all they said. And so I walk in the lobby and there's a lady there, and I knew that it would be her. And she like was tattooed from head to toe, and she looked so angry. And I was
mm.
like, oh no. And I said, hi. And I couldn't, and then I lost her name. Like I didn't look it up on the schedule, and I thought I can't remember her name. And I said, what's your name? And she said, Loretta Lynn. And I thought, oh no. And I said, well, come in. And I was like, and I said, what brings you here? And she said, something kind of crazy about it. And I kept trying to clarify. And finally I said, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to get your counselor on the phone. Like, and I just called the counselor, put her on speaker, and I said, hey, I'm here with so and so, and we're just not clear why she's here. And she basically said, if she doesn't come and work with you and get her anger under control, we're not giving her any money. And I'm like, well, that would have been a good thing to tell me before, but thanks a lot. And I hung up. And so I began to try to sell the program for her. I'm just like, and eventually I figure out that she can't sleep. And I said, I can help you sleep. She was like, really? I said, yeah. And I said, if you're going to have to come here anyway, why not let me help you? And she was like, oh, I don't. And I said, well, how do you want me to help you? And she said, I want you to sign all these papers and say I came here, and then you get paid for doing nothing and I don't have to come back. And I said, well, I can't do that. So we just kept rolling on, and that first day she left and she said, I feel good. I'll come back. And I said,
Mm.
good. And she really had to struggle to come back because she had to get call a ride, and like our public transportation here is bad. So she's like getting dropped off an hour early, get him to sit outside for it. Like it was bad. But so she kept coming. And to make a long story short, one day she said, when I'm here, I feel like I'm smoking pot. And
Mm.
and I just said, well, tell me more about that. And we kept talking. And so basically I was able to say, this makes you relax. And now you might not need to smoke pot. And she said, I also feels like I don't need to fight anymore. And I said, what do you mean need to fight? And she said, well, I used to go to this place, and she called in. I'd never heard of it, but I called somebody and asked what it was. And apparently it was like the scariest bar in town, like
Mm.
just a hole in the wall that was really like, didn't have like licenses or anything. Like they were just serving liquor and people were fighting, and it was just, it was real. And I said, why do you go there? And she said, I just go there when I need to fight. So she went there and she was like 60 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she went there with this need to fight. And then one day she came in and she said, something happened yesterday that's never happened before. And I said, what? And she's like, I got out of my car, and this lady walked out of the jewelry store, and she was carrying stuff, and she bumped into me. And she said, before I even thought, I said, I'm sorry. And then she said, oh, honey, you shouldn't be sorry. I wasn't watching where I was going. And she said she just patted me and went on. And she said, I got to thinking the reason people probably are rude to me is because I'm rude to everybody. And then I said, I'm sorry. And then she was nice. So maybe everybody might be like, it was this huge thing that we could have never talked through. I
Yeah.
could have never convinced her that not everybody was against her. And then she told her boyfriend, "You're either gonna, we're not fighting anymore. And if you fight with me anymore, you have to leave." And he said, "I've never wanted to fight. I just defend myself." And so then they started getting better. And then she said, I called my daughter and I was like, "Oh, I didn't know you had a daughter." And she said, "Yeah, I haven't got to see my grandkids in like 10 years." And
Mm,
I said, "Oh," I said, "Well, what happened?" And she said, "I just told her how sorry I was and that I was doing this and I was doing better. And she said that we could keep talking on the phone and maybe someday they would come see me." And then they did. And then she established that relationship back. Then she got a job cleaning houses. And she said, the lady said, if I'll do a good job, she'll call her friends. And then she got all these different houses. Like it just, like it was astounding. And
wow.
the last time I saw her, she just hugged me and she thanked me. And not long after that, I saw her picture in the paper. She had won a fishing contest at the park and she had the trophy and the fish and was just grinning from ear to ear. Like she found her life. And I don't feel like without biofeedback, she would have ever done that because I could have never taught her better. Like
Yeah, right.
she just didn't have a trust for the world because her nervous system was so overstimulated.
Yeah, that's awesome story. That is super cool. And now that feels so good too to, I try not to take credit because I think there's something going on way bigger than me. But it feels good to have played a part in it and to been in a tool in the master's hand kind of thing to help somebody go from all the way there. That's just, and I get to see it in recovery too. That just from all the way almost one end of the spectrum
All the way to the other.
to
Yeah,
this other side where things are just going so great for these people that their careers, their families, their relationships, everything about everything, everything improved, got much better than they'd ever. That's another funny thing that and I'm sure that your clients can probably say the same thing. I've heard it. If I'd have written a script, I'd have sold myself short uh, because of the blessings and the benefit that's happened in my life as a result of starting to, at some level, take responsibility for getting better. Taking those actions and letting somebody help you, because there is help.
for sure. Well, I really appreciate you having me so
Well,
much.
it's been awesome. Really loved hearing about it. And I always say this ad nauseum is that you can be watching stuff. My latest example is I do a little handyman and still, and I have a few elderly clients that I just can't say no to because they need help, and I can like to go help them and do their little odds and ends that they need done. And the other day I was over there and the TV was blaring as people like to do, and I'm sitting there waiting for a Ring camera to boot up or whatever, and I hear murder, death, shooting, killing, fire. I mean, that was all that was coming out of that box, and it was actually making me very uncomfortable, to the point that I usually don't. I said, "Could you please mute that?" And where I'm going with that is that if you're looking in places, there's a lot of bad stuff going on, and it can kind of look like the world is going to hell in a handbasket. But I continually meet people like you, who are forces for good. They're out there doing good in the world, and man, I really need doses like this. I get high doing this. This energized me, same kind of like what you were saying. I think same thing. When I do yoga, it's the same kind of thing. I feel like it. I did a sound bath yesterday, 2 hours of a sound bath laying on a yoga mat, and I just loved it. I checked out. I wasn't worried about anything. I just laid there and absorbed those frequencies and got high on that yesterday. So thank you for being a force for good in the world and bringing everything you have to bear to help people, especially the kids, because golly, they need it. I wouldn't want to be growing up right now.
Right. Well, if anybody wants to contact me, it's restoreofada.com. That's my website.
All right, now make sure it's in the notes and all that. And I try to do just in time delivery pretty much with these podcasts. I never do. They're always out within a week. So I will fire you off the links and let you know when it's out.
Great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.